It's not the end of business, it's actually an opportunity to do things differently. This conversation with an executive coach, Neeru Sharma, will just prove that. We discuss how she pivoted her business to the current situation, what are the challenges for business leaders, and how to tackle them. You will get several tools, techniques, and practical actions to take to make sure your business and yourself survive these challenging times. Neeru, thanks for joining us in Dubai Business Podcast. I can't start differently. How are you and your business doing nowadays?
Thank you so much for inviting me here, Lucas. And these are unprecedented times. So that's a very interesting question. How am I doing, and how my business doing? And I think we're both doing very differently. So I think I'm kind of trying to embrace the change. And there's a lot of there's a lot of change happening. So I'm kind of trying to make sense of it. My business is luckily doing pretty well. I'm an executive coach. I work one-to-one primarily with my clients, and I have seamlessly managed to transition all my clients online. And given the internet is working, that's going pretty well. So luckily that's happened. It was a small pivot I had to do pretty soon, and it's doing really well. Thank you.
Okay, that's great to hear. I was actually thinking this as a executive coach. You probably have a queue of people now waiting for your services. Is it the case?
So yes, I have had quite a few people approach me, and there is, maybe there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about executive coaching and maybe therapy. So yes, so a lot of people are, need to manage their stress with the immediate support or change that's needed, and my work primarily is over the long term. So I do get a lot of inquiries. I get a lot of people kind of saying, what do I do? How can I navigate this? For that, I do a lot of support. I have a Facebook group, a free Facebook group, and I go live in the Facebook group every week, answering questions, helping people to navigate this change. But my work primarily is with business owners who are willing to commit to themselves for a longer period of time, because change really happens and sticks over a longer period of time. So yes, I have had quite a few people now approach me and say, I need to really understand how I can pivot my business, and what can I do with this. So for some people, it's like my business. This is the end of my business. What can I do? But it's actually not the end of your business. There's always something that you can pick up and move from there.
I love that. I love that you're saying this right at the beginning, because yeah, that's why we're doing all those episodes, to show to people that it's actually not end of the world, but it's just maybe a different
Yes,
start or something like that.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Amazing. Neil, let's maybe look a little bit at what you said about your business, that you had to pivot a little bit to online. What were the things, very practically, what were the things you had to do regarding this situation? How you pivoted your business to be online?
Okay, thank you for asking that. So my work primarily is one-to-one coaching, and I work with business owners who run their own businesses. So they're basically decision makers. And around the time, maybe it was about 3 weeks ago, when the schools closed, I knew that there was something that was going to happen. So before the government actually put a lockdown, I had a contingency plan in place, and I started thinking about what would happen if this happened, and what would happen if if this happened. So I made a couple of scenarios, and the technology was there, and I think a lot of business owners who I've been talking to as well, say the same thing, that we have a lot of technology, but because sometimes we're not forced to embrace it, we kind of stay on sides. That's what I was doing. So the technology was there, but I was not using it. My clients were preferring to meet face to face. So the first thing I did was I made a decision that this is what I want to do. And I think that's the most important thing, because as a leader, if I have to lead my clients and I have to lead my team, I need to know what I want to do. So that was the first thing that I did. I spent quite a bit of time understanding what was important for the safety of everybody involved. And I decided that that was what we were going to do. And then the second thing that I did was we had communication with each and every client. So we phased out the communication in terms of who needed to know first, who needed to know next, and we piloted it. So first we took one or two clients with whom we could transition it online. We knew they'd been working with us for a longer period of time. They were, more open to embracing change. So we approached them first. We piloted it. Of course, we had some technical glitches in the beginning,
Yeah.
and once we got that feedback, then we were ready to roll it out. So again, I think that just because this crisis has happened doesn't mean we should not follow the best practices that we know. If we want to start something new, there are best practices. Try it out. First know what you want to do, pilot it, get some feedback, and then you roll it out. So that's what I did to kind of transition all my clients. So now I've got 100% of my clients online, um, and it's working pretty fine. We already had some online systems to help manage clients. We have an online learning system, and we also have an online coach accountable system. So those, we had a little bit of technical stuff to integrate all of those together, but it's working really nice now. And I think that there are so many tools. I was so fascinated that I stayed away from this internet business thing for a while, but there are so many tools that help us to seamlessly integrate the systems, and actually you have more time now to create and to think about new things and to read and upgrade my skill set. So I think it's been it was a little shaky in the beginning, but I think it's been pretty good, the transition to moving online.
Amazing. Yeah, it seems really your business was kind of ready for that transition. You mentioned that
Yes.
there are many tools we can use. Sometimes I hear from business owners that there are too many tools, and now they quickly need to adapt to all of them.
Yes.
Would you recommend something which you are using for your business? You mentioned some learning system and things like that. Would
Yes.
you recommend
Yes.
something for business owners?
So actually last year, so this is a tool actually, if anybody's interested in if anybody's interested in creating an online learning system, it's a brilliant tool. It's a platform actually. It's called Simplero, and I embraced Simplero I think around August last year or September last year, and I've created different courses for my clients to learn. So it's a lot of work that we do with the clients, but also we have a repository, to learn about their money mindset, about their mindset, as well as about their, meditation, those kinds of things. So we've got a lot of learning that sits on the platform. But why I love this particular platform, Simplero, is because I can integrate my sales funnel in it. I can integrate all my communication on my email platforms. I can integrate my billing into it, and it it works with Zapier very well for other platforms that you need to integrate things into. So rather than having to buy MailChimp and multiple other systems, I'm able to just use one system, and it works really well. So that's one of the systems that I'm using right now. The other things which I've done is I've actually moved to automating the booking system. So we're using Calendly. I know a lot of people use Acuity, and I've chosen just to go with Calendly because that's something I was comfortable with. And I'm able to integrate it with GoToMeeting. So I'm not using Zoom. I chose to use GoToMeeting because when I actually moved my clients online, Zoom was still banned here in the UAE. It was still blocked here in the UAE. So I had to have a system that was sustainable over the longer run. It was stable and secure. So that's why I chose GoToMeeting. So all of these systems, they integrate together, and clients are able to come online. They're able to book a session. They get the call-in details, and then we can connect it to their system in terms of their learning. And then we also have a second system which we call Coach Accountable, where basically we monitor, like we send them prompts and we monitor how they're getting along in between the sessions. So there's a lot of forms that we send in, reflections. There's some journaling that our clients can do on that system as well. So it's these two systems. We already had them. We were already using them before before the crisis. But now, because all the learning has now gone online, we're able to integrate all these systems much better.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for those tips. I believe it can be helpful for others. Let's now move to the topic of challenges which are now in front of leaders, which I believe is now your daily topic. So maybe let's start very broad. What are the challenges in general you see this crisis put on leaders?
Yeah, and I like that you've mentioned that you've used the word crisis, because it is change, and when change happens too fast, a lot of it happens, and it happens, too soon. We call it a crisis, but actually it's change. And one of the most important things for leaders to recognize is that we all respond to change in different ways. So as a leader, whether you're a business owner who is alone in their business, or you have a team of 1 to 5, or you have a much larger team of 100 or 200 people, everyone is going to respond to change in different ways. And each of us is going to respond to change in our personal life in a different way, and maybe in our business in a different way. And that's why when I answered the question early on, the question you asked me, how am I doing and how is my business doing? We both might be responding to change in very different ways. So there are 3 types of change responses. There are people who, or the response is to leap. So the people who leap, they embrace change really fast. So in my business, I was like, awesome, we can go online, jumped into that. Whereas in my personal life, I was taking a much more slower perspective, and this perspective is called the bridge building perspective. So where we want to have more information before we take a decision, we want to talk to people, and we want to make sure that once I take a decision, it's the right decision to take. And the third response to change is, traditional response. So which is, I want to hold on to what's working. So for example, as a business owner, you might say, this system was working for me. I want to hold on to it. I don't want to let it go. So each of us is going to respond. As a leader, you're going to respond to the change in a different way. And your team is going to respond to the change in a different way. And so one of the biggest mistakes that a business owner can make is to not recognize that fact, that your team needs you to support them through this change, because everybody in your team may be responding in a different way. If you as a business owner maybe are taking time and building bridges, you might find that there's some team members who have already crossed the edge. They're on the other side. They're like, hey, tell us what we need to do. So as a leader, you have to really understand your own response to change without judgment. So I hear a lot of business owners, maybe they're in despair. They're like, I've really failed my team. I should be doing a lot more. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. And there's a lot of judgment in that. And at this time, it's so important for us to show compassion to ourselves first. If we're able to show compassion to ourselves, then we're able to show compassion to others. So I think that's the first thing, and not to judge your response to change, but to recognize that this is how I'm responding to change, and this is what I need. So I think that's one of the most important things, is to recognize that we all respond to change in different ways, and do not judge other people's response to change. So if someone is taking longer than usual, the rest of your team has moved online, but someone is struggling with having meetings online maybe. Also, the workplace has changed. So where now everyone is at home. I was talking to a client yesterday, and she was saying that everyone is in my office, So my kids are in my office, my husband is in my office, and I'm in my office. We're all in the office together. So, and her, her partner's also working. Her kids have to do schoolwork. So we have to really understand that, when people are working from home, they're also undergoing that change. They may genuinely want to be, very, very focused on the work that you're giving them, but they also have realities that are happening within their workspace. So really try to be compassionate about them, about that, and really understand what does your business need, and communicate what needs to happen. So the worst thing that could happen is you're expecting someone to deliver something and they've not had a chance to do it, and they get pulled up for that, rather to ask questions and say, okay, tell me, are you okay, are you going to be able to do this, how are you going to do this? So I think that that is something which which can really work. So, I share a practical example with what happened with my team. So, I have an operations manager who works from Abu Dhabi, and so we've already been working remotely through for the last 1.5 2 years. But she's now she has 3 kids, and her kids now were at home. So what we did as part of the transition was we actually sat and talked about how we needed to maybe adjust the work timings. So what work timings would work, and what would not. We also readjusted priority projects. So there were some projects that could wait, but there were some projects that absolutely didn't have to wait. So we sat down and we listed out what was really important for us to be working on, and then we checked in about what was working and what was not. So just because we had this plan, it didn't mean it's going to work. So and it didn't. Okay, we thought, oh, this is going to be so easy. We're going to do 2 hours at this time, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening, and actually didn't work like that. So there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of distraction. So we talked about what we needed to do to adjust to that, and we did not miss a single productive day, but we had a lot more communication happening, where she was safe to share about what was working and what was not working. And I think that as a leader is very important, to make sure that your team feels safe to share with you if they were not able to do what you expected them to do that day. So you have to communicate faster, you have to communicate more often, and you have to communicate in a space that's non-judgmental, that allows your team to share what's working and what's not working. And I must say that by doing this, we've come up with so many new ideas about what we could do, how we could work, and how we could make life much easier. And those ideas came about because she felt free to experiment and to share ideas, and all of that.
That's amazing. Neera, how do I create as a leader such a safe environment? Because very often people are afraid, for example, to say, hey, sorry, I have kids at home, so they might disturb us during the call. People are ashamed of it. While now all of us are on the same boat. All of us are literally working from home. So all of us are running the same story now. How do I create such a safe environment for my people, for my team, to not be afraid of this?
Yeah. So that's such an important question to ask. And I one of the frameworks that I use with all my clients is for you to recognize when you're receiving some information, that we receive and we filter that information through biases. We all have biases. We make assumptions. I know somebody, and when they work from home, they really don't work from home. So I'm assuming that that's how you're going to work from home. Or even you may have a positive bias, and you may say, I know that when I work from home, I work really well. So I'm assuming you're also going to work that way. So when we receive information, to receive it without judgment, whether that judgment is positive or negative, and to ask more questions. So be curious about it. So in terms of the communication that you share with your team, it's good to maybe set some alignment before, where you do kind of an interpersonal alignment with you and your team, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5 people, and really kind of say, look, when you share some information, we're going to practice not judging it. So just receiving it as information, with the intent of with the intent of moving forward. But of course, that trust has to be built. It takes time to build trust, and you have to be consistent in your actions. So you really have to be consistent in not jumping to conclusions, not judging people, not bringing past views, opinions, fights back to the back to that discussion. Stay focused on now, like what's happening now, and ask more questions, be more curious, and really come with the intent to help and to resolve what's happening there without judgment. So that, I think that's one of the most important things, to create trust. And it's something that happens over time. And this is an opportunity for leaders to do that. It's an opportunity for leaders to create that space, which maybe you were very busy. So, I work with busy business owners, and so my clients often say, I'm so busy, like I don't have time for this. I know I need to coach this, this future leader, but I don't have time. This is now the time that you can invest in building those deeper relationships and creating spaces where you can work with your team, and your team start building trust with your team.
Amazing. Do you see some, like, let's say maybe typical mistakes leaders do now when managing the team or when speaking to the team, or maybe not speaking to the team actually?
Yeah. So I think that I won't call it a mistake. I'll call it a blind spot. And we all have blind spots. Like when you're driving a car, we all have a blind spot, where if a car comes over there, you can't see it in the rear view mirror, you can't see it in that mirror. So if you want to change lanes, you really need to look back and make sure you've covered that blind spot. So I believe that we all have blind spots. And at this time as well, when we're thinking of pivoting and we're thinking of moving, it's important for us to be aware of what those blind spots are. So for example, when you're driving a car, and you go to learn how to drive the car, the instructor tells you that there is a blind spot. So you must know that even though you have these tools, you have this rear view mirror, and then you have another mirror on the side, you have another one here, you still cannot see the whole reality. You need to shift and turn a little bit to get some more information. So I think for us is really to know what our blind spots are. Maybe we have blind spots around how we communicate, or how people communicate with us, or how they share information with us. So I think that's one of the most important things is at this time for leaders and business owners to recognize what your blind spots are, so that you can be more curious and you can be more aware and ask questions to uncover those blind spots, so that you have more information in that space before you go ahead and you take a decision. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that leaders will have at this time is that they're not aware of those blind spots, as they're trying to make decisions and move. So I think that's one of the most important ones. A lot of leaders have, I run an assessment, a personality assessment called Hogan, and in that we look at the dark side of your personality. So when you're aware of the dark side, which are your blind spots, you have a lot more awareness of when you're under stress, this is how you might behave. So some people become very skeptical. Some people become, they might communicate with sarcasm. Some people will, become passive aggressive. So you have to be aware of what is your response on the dark side when you're under stress, because that's how you might be communicating now. So, you might be using a lot of sarcasm. You might use it as a joke, but at this time, people will not, they may not accept it like that. You might become more skeptical. So you're doubting the intentions of your team or your suppliers or your investors. So be aware of that, because that is not reality. It is, you're making assumptions about what might happen. So be aware of what your blind spots are, and that will give you more information to, take decisions, to navigate this, this new route that we're all having to take. And then I think that once we're able to do that, once we're a lot more aware of what's happening around us, and our own blind spots, I think then we're going to be able to shift gears. Another thing that I think is a challenge with a lot of business owners is you don't have to completely shift your business. There is something that's working. So if you've been in business for a couple of years and you've been making a profit, or you're breaking even, you know that you have a system that works somehow. So don't try to kill what's working. Keep it. If it's working, keep it. But now you have an opportunity to see what else I could do to ride on top of that. So I think one of the biggest challenges that business owners might have is to say, okay, this is not working, I'm going to scrap it and I'm going to start something completely new. Is probably not going to be a really good option to look at. So I think that's what is, keep the eye on the prize, on your vision. If you have a vision of where you want your organization to be, in the next 5 or 10 years. And yes, the harsh reality has changed. The reality is different. It's harsh. It's it's dark. There's a storm going on. But if you know that that's where you want to go in the longer term, then you can stay focused on that. While at the same time, of course, managing your harsh realities, the cash flow issues, there are very hard decisions around team members, around business, around products, all of that to be made at the same time. But it's important to keep an eye on the prize and keep communicating that with your team. So if you do have a team, you've built your team over a long period of time, and it's one of the biggest challenges that small business owners have is attracting and retaining talent. And just being able to support that talent during this time is really going to be a game changer for a lot of businesses.
Definitely, definitely. You're mentioning communication with the team, and that sometimes it can get tricky when we mean something with the sarcasm, etc. I found this time it's a little bit challenging for leaders who didn't have the experience with remote leading, as you probably had with having your someone from your team in Abu Dhabi. What can we be aware when we start communicate remotely with our team? What should we keep in mind?
Yeah, so I think that this is, it's a different way of communicating. So we miss a lot of the non-verbal cues that we see when we're in the office. So you see someone and you see, oh, the person, you can tell from the non-verbal language, oh, they're having a good day today, or they're not having a good day today, and you can change your response or your your communication according to that. Now, when you meet someone or you're speaking to someone, you're either just on the phone, or if you're able to get onto video, you might get onto video. So I think just being aware that you don't have all the communication tools that you had before. So there's, of course, we use words, but there's also the tone of your voice. There is body language. There is, you can tell from someone's face. You can tell about from the tone of their voice. So I think that one of the things that I would advise, or an idea for business owners to use, is to stop all distractions. So keep your phone away. If you're having a Zoom call with somebody, don't be, most of us were sitting with lots and lots of tools. So you got your iPad, you have another computer here, you have a phone here, or 2 phones, and everything's buzzing at the same time. Just be present with that person that you're communicating with, or if with your team. So avoid all the distractions. If you have to get onto a call, make sure that people around you know that you're in a call and you're not going to be disturbed. And when you're able to sit with somebody like this, you can see a lot more about what's happening for them, how they're responding to what you're communicating, and all that. Yes, and of course we understand we don't have time to do this all the time, but I think it's important to carve out time just to talk about the important topics, or even just to make that human connection with your team. But avoid all distractions. Be absolutely present in the meeting, because that's when you can tell what's happening with the person. You're able to access a lot more information from the non-verbal cues that are being sent to you. So I think that's definitely one of the things that could help to communicate in these times. A second one is to be wary of communicating difficult messages or important messages only with email. We've got so much stuff to do, and just writing an email and shooting it off can actually create a lot of stress if you've not thought about the tone within which it's been received and all that. So I think that for difficult messages, or even WhatsApp, so people are running business on WhatsApp nowadays.
Yeah.
So just being aware of that. If you have to use WhatsApp, maybe record a voice message. I personally don't like receiving voice messages because I can't access them if I'm sitting with somebody. I can't access the voice message. So make sure that you check with the other person what form of communication works for them. And if it does work, then maybe sometimes sending a voice message might be better than typing out text. So I think it's important to also know what you prefer, but it's important to also know what form of communication the other person prefers, and be able to use that. There's a tool called Slack. Again, it's something which I downloaded a while ago, but I haven't really been using. But I think Slack is another excellent tool because you can have different channels for different topics. So you can have a channel that's business related, and then you can have a channel that's personal. You can ask your team to share, what are you doing today. You can ask them to share celebrations of what they're doing, and keep the business messages separate. I think that's a great way to separate communication and not lose important communication at this time, because that's also important. As a business owner, you have to run your business, and you have to you have to have access to the information that you need to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a very important point in like being clear in the communication is probably very important now, as people are worried what negative news we will receive today, right? We're just expecting what bad news we're gonna get. And we can see with many leaders actually around the world, like President Trump, when he says something at a press conference and the army of his experts need to come and kind of iterate and explain what he meant by the message, we probably need to avoid this as a small business leader, right?
Yes, absolutely. And whenever I teach communication, I always ask the people to remember that as a communicator, it's your responsibility to make sure that your message has been received in the way that you intended it to. It's not the other person's responsibility to figure out what you were trying to say and what you really meant to say. It's your responsibility as the person who's initiating the conversation or the communication to ensure that your message has been received in the way that you intended it. For that, you need to know exactly what you intend to say. So a lot of times, especially in these stress times, we start saying things, but we don't know what we want to say. And we figure it out as we're trying to say it. That creates even more confusion for your team. So really think through what you want to say, and think about the words you want to use, and how you want to share it. Storytelling is a great way to share messages now. But it takes some time to think about what it is that you want to say, and talk about a story that that represents what it is that the message that you're trying to share. So you can use storytelling. You can bring out myths of the organization, of how did we tackle this challenge in 2008, or at some other time when we had a similar crisis. Bring those stories out. There's a lot of myth that that resides within organizations as wisdom, and we can bring that up through stories, and we can teach our teams to also share that with their teams, with our clients, and then I think it's an opportunity for us to deepen our corporate culture as well. So it gives us the opportunity to to understand and say, this is how we respond to change, or this is how we respond to this kind of challenge. So definitely as a leader, you have to know what you want to communicate, and it's your responsibility that you communicate, that it's received in the way that you want it to. We have so many tools. You can use stories, you can use pictures, you can use presentations, you can use video, a lot of these things. But if your message has not been received in the way that you intended it to, then it's your responsibility to communicate that. So that's why we always get response back from people. So it doesn't always have to be written. So if you're in video and you're sharing a message, you already know how it's being received. So you're receiving information back. It will help you to edit. It will help you to add more information. It will help you to clarify what you're trying to say, because you're receiving information back. And that's why I think it's important to include some form of visual communication wherever possible.
Amazing, amazing, very good. Let's move to maybe the leaders themselves, because if I should positively impact my team, I first probably need to take care of myself. And nowadays, for many business leaders, it's a really tough time. Some businesses are really struggling, so for business leaders, it is a tough time. What should I do to maintain, let's say, my mental health in the first place nowadays?
Yes, this is so important, because I think as business owners, we have a lot of responsibility for our business, for our clients, our suppliers, our teams, as well as our own selves and our families. And a lot of business owners, at this time, they feel stressed out to even share the kind of stress that they might be going through, with their family as well. So I think it's important to be supported and to ask for help. So if you need help, there's a lot of places where you can ask for help. I think that's one, is to maybe make a list of people you can talk to, and who you can stay in touch with, also to check in on them. Not just for you to take, but for you to give as well. I think that's one of the most important things. I think just doing some kind of grounding activity every day. So don't start the day with your phone, or getting up and checking out news and all those kind of things. So personally, I don't listen to any news at all. I switched off my TV completely. But everybody has their own preferences. So do some kind of grounding activity. It could be walking barefoot on the ground if you want to. It could be, if you do some meditation, it could be that. If you're if you're religious, some kind of connecting to to God, or whatever it is that you believe in. And if you're not, then just spending some time with yourself. So where there's no noise, nobody's talking to you, you're not making a list of things to do. It could even be just sitting with a cup of tea or coffee, and just spending that time for yourself. It's so important, I think, just to ground yourself before you jump in to start working and doing those kind of things. So I think that's one of the most important things to do to start off. But get help. If you're depressed, you need to get help. There are a lot of people offering a lot of support, and it's free as well, to help manage the stress. Please do that. I have a free Facebook group, where I share. I come on and I have answer questions every week. You can join those kind of groups, and you can, if you have a coach, you can actually work much closely with your coach. So for example, one of the things I've done during this time with my clients is, I've invited them to call me whenever they need to call me. And we've built in a lot more check-ins. So we usually meet every 2 weeks. Now we check in a lot more often, have that support. So if you do already have some kind of resource that you're working with, please ask them for more support if it's not already been offered to you. Use this time to learn, to connect, and give yourself space. This is what I was telling you initially when we were chatting early in the morning. Is I've I have some structure in my day, but I also have some open space. So the structure keeps me grounded, because I know, okay, I'm doing this today, but I need the open space to get the stress out, to talk about it, to laugh, to maybe cook. So do something like this. Now that you're at home, I think pretty much all over the world people are quarantined at home. So use this time to pick up a hobby, to spend time doing things that maybe you never had the time to do, but you've always wanted to do. So I think that's something that you can do. So pick up some kind of grounding activity to do during the day as well.
Neeru, we're saying meditation, maybe grounding activity, but what I hear as objection from business leaders is, look, my business is going down, I'm losing clients every day, I need to fix this fire, fix that fire, I don't really have time for this.
Yes.
How do I find time for something like this at the time I feel like my business is going down?
Yeah, and, that's so important. I hear that as well all the time. And my response to that is, so is that working? Is your current response where you're, stressed out and you're jumping to solve problems and fight fires, is that working? And if it's working, then that's fine. But if it's not working, then I'm going to invite you to start thinking about small pockets of time that you can take. When I first started meditating, I forget who it was. There was a really interesting guy who said, you don't have to sit and meditate for an hour. You can, in your shower every day, hopefully having a shower every day. If you're not, I think you need to get some help, because that's a sign of depression actually.
It's a different problem we probably won't fix now.
So if you're in the shower, just notice that the shower, notice the water falling on your head, on your shoulders, trickling past your face. Just notice it and feel the water trickling down. Do it whatever, 3 minutes you have a shower, 5 minutes you have a shower. Just sit silently and feel it. Stop thinking about what you need to do somewhere else. So you can actually meditate while you're doing something which you anyway would be doing. You could do the same thing when you're brushing your teeth. We mindlessly brush our teeth, but at that time our mind is off somewhere else. So notice when you're brushing your teeth, what does it feel like? What does the brush feel like? Are you able to taste the toothpaste or something? So you can just be present at that time. So start with small things like this. When you're eating food, don't watch TV when you're eating food. Keep the phone away. Sit and notice your food and taste every single bite. That's also a form of meditation. And as you start doing these kind of grounding activities, so we call them grounding because it just helps us to be present where you are now. Your where your physical body is now. And we don't allow ourselves to feel that. We're scared of the pain that we might feel, or we're scared that we'll drop off this treadmill that we're on. I've got to run for this marathon, I'm on this treadmill, and then if I do this, I'm going to be off the treadmill. How will I get back on it? But actually, to find a different way that will help you to make things work, you do have to get out of your head. And when you're in your head, you're analyzing and you're thinking and you're stressed out, it doesn't help. Another very simple grounding activity is just simple breathing. You can go online, you can Google, it's called box breathing. So if you just go and Google box breathing, there's a small GIF that comes in, and it's, it looks like this. So when you breathe out, and then you breathe in, and then you breathe out, you can do it for 2 minutes. So if a business owner tells me that they don't have 2 minutes to sit and breathe, then I'm going to tell them that that's rubbish. Okay. So you can do this. There are so many tools, just 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you can do. But throughout the day, if you just stop and you just notice, okay, what's happening right now? How am I feeling? I'm drinking tea. How does this tea feel when I'm drinking it? What does it really taste like? And it just helps us to get out of our head and kind of try to access the wisdom that resides in our intuition, in our gut, in our heart. These are, we have a lot of tools internally, but we don't allow ourselves to have that. So if you're okay with the stress and you think you're going to carry on with the stress, then please don't try to do any of these things. But if you know that the stress is getting too much to you, and you need to calm down a little bit, then couple of strategies. Get off those WhatsApp groups that are sending fake news and scaring you all the time. You will be able to access information if you just check them once a day, or you find a website that where you can access reliable information once or twice a day. That's it. You don't need it more than that. Don't listen to the news. It's full of rhetoric. I don't think I've seen any single news channel that has said anything nice that's helpful for me where I am right now and my business situation. So don't give your precious time to places which are not going to help you move forward. Um, Join groups of other business owners who are positive and who are committed to staying positive through this change, um, and take care of yourself. So I think that is so important. We can stop, uh, we can say no to where we're spending our time that's not serving us, and instead we can choose to say yes to something where we can spend our precious time in something that would serve us.
Yeah, and you're mentioning communicate with others, and you mentioned your Facebook group before. I think this is a great community or positive community. I would say we definitely will link it for our listeners in the episode show notes so they can join
Thank
there.
you. Yeah, thank you so much.
I was thinking that very, very often from business leaders' point of view, it's not about like not having those 2 minutes, of course. It's kind of they don't see a benefit of stepping back, and they really want to be that firefighter who does every single thing.
Yeah.
How do I shift this mindset of me needing to jump on every single thing which is coming up now, and rather taking a step back? How do I prioritize this?
Yeah. So, if any of these grounding activities don't work, trying to exercise, go for a walk if you're allowed to, wherever you are, or run, or exercise. Again, that's another way of getting out of your head to clear your mind. One of the things which I've started doing is I've told myself that I'll not take a decision now. If I have to take a decision on something, I will put the deadline a little bit further down and allow myself the time to reflect on it. Sometimes I get access to more information. Might ask for it, or I might just find it. Really kind of being cognizant of that. Also notice your behavior of what you do when you're under stress. So, for example, one of the things that I do, and I've seen a lot of people do this as well, is we go online. We're like, okay, let me go shop. So you go online and you start shopping for stuff because you don't know what to do. It's a stress buster, right? So again, one of the things that I've done is I like, as a metaphor, I put something in the shopping cart and I leave it there for 24 hours. And as a decision-making metaphor, if you can afford to, as a business owner, take something that you need to take a decision on and leave it in the shopping cart for 24 hours. So what that means is, yes, I want to take a decision. I want to communicate this. If you have the luxury of 24 hours, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you need to take that decision now. You need to communicate it now. And that's a different situation. But if you have the luxury of time, take that and plonk it in the shopping cart and leave it. Leave it in the shopping cart for 24 hours. Your mind will access the wisdom of your intuition. You might have access to more information, and you can come back after 24 hours and decide if you still want it, or if you don't need it. And sometimes it's gone from the shopping cart. Okay, so literally this metaphor of shopping online it's really useful, because sometimes you come back and the problem has already been solved, so you don't really need to do anything. So but of course you have to be prepared. So again, this is not for all decisions. It's for the decisions where you have the luxury of time. There are some decisions that don't allow you that luxury of time. You have to take a decision now, and it might be right or it might be wrong. So use that shopping cart. Place your decision on the shopping cart. Come back after 24 hours, after you've thought about it, you've reflected, and do you really want it? Do you still want it? And if you do, then, and it's still available, then it's yours to have. So you can use that as a metaphor for, not scrambling and jumping and saying, okay, do I do this? Do I do this? I think also a big thing now is really about understanding, what do I need to say no to? And for that, you have to be clear on what you want to say yes to. So again, being really clear on, okay, for the next 2 or 3 months, what is the focus of my business? And that's what I'm going to say yes to. And if something is not aligned with that, then I'm going to say no to it. And sometimes it's difficult because you're like, oh, I could, make a little bit of money over here. I'm seeing a lot of business owners do that. They're, picking up small things to trade, and they're, not making any money out of it. Maybe they might be making $10 or $20 out of it, but it keeps them busy. And, I would advise you to say no to those things, because you, as a business owner, you're still creative, you're still a genius, you're still smart. You have to be spending your precious time on your business where your business needs you the most, not on something which is on fire. It's hot and everyone's doing it, and so I better be on that bandwagon. So notice when you're telling yourself this, and learn how to say no to things. So no to things that are not aligned with your vision. So over the last week, I've actually done 2 quarterly goal setting sessions for my clients and people who are interested. But I'm happy if anybody's interested to do that, to help them really plan for 2020. We set not 2020, sorry, for the next quarter, for quarter 2, and we set specific goals and what areas we're going to focus on. And anything that does not fall in those areas, you say no to them. Because now you know that these are the things where I need to be focusing my precious time and my team's time, because this crisis is going to be over. And then you'll feel like, oh, that was 3 months. I could have done something to really build up my business in that time. So just be wary of when you're responding out of fear and doing things because everybody else is doing them. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you should do it. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should be doing that. So just recognize when you're jumping into something, before you say yes to something, put it in the shopping cart. Say, okay, before I say yes to something new, it's going to be in the shopping cart for 24 hours. And if I still want it, then I can have it. Otherwise, I won't have it. So again, that's something for you to think of. You don't have to say yes to everything. You have to say yes to a few things. And then you have to say no to a whole load of things as well.
This is so great, Neeru. I think everyone who's listening now, if there's one thing you want to note down today, it's this shopping cart technique. So if you have some decision which you don't need to make urgently now, put any of your ideas or decisions or things you want to communicate through your shopping cart, and give it some time and give it a second thought. Because with all the news which are coming, and with the situation changing so quickly now, probably tomorrow we might have a different perspective on this, and I think
Absolutely.
it's really helpful.
Absolutely.
Amazing, Neeru. Let's step a little bit away from the current situation. I've seen you're saying about yourself that you've been exhausted with and frustrated with your actions not seeing results, and then you shifted it. That's how you speak about your business in your profile.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this shift. Maybe I believe this will be a nice story. So tell us a bit about this shift.
Thank you for asking that question. So I started my business almost 6 years ago. And when I started my business, I wanted to do so many things. And I was so ambitious, and I had a lot of things that I wanted to do. So I have in me, a part of me is a hyperachiever. So if I do something, I tell myself it has to be the best, and it has to be, I have to put 120% of my effort into it. At the time when I started my business, I wasn't aware of this is how this was affecting me. And actually, a lot of my clients that I work with also have a hyperachiever in them. And so through the work that we do, we're able to recognize that and see how we can help ourselves. So I would say yes to a lot of opportunities that were coming my way that would keep me busy. So there was a point of time where I was working weekends. So I worked on a Friday, a Saturday, and then the whole week, I think I put in about 12 to 13 hours of non-stop training. And so that means I was standing in the front of a room of probably 50 to 60 people, and I was talking on my own. And that was exhausting. And I would come back home and I would be exhausted. I couldn't think about the strategy of my business. And I was literally just running from one training program to another. And because of this, I didn't negotiate with them. I was just taking the business, and I was telling myself that if I say no, I'll lose the business. So I might as well do it. Other business owners are struggling, other coaches are struggling. Look, I'm thriving, so I can't even say no to them. But that exhaustion led me to a burnout, and I've had a couple of burnout episodes in my life. And I think this was in 2017 or 2018. I had a burnout in like April. And basically for like 3 days, I couldn't get out of my bed. I was just sleeping because I was exhausted. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And then I would get up and I would say, okay, now I'm fine. I would go back. And I see a lot of business owners do this as well. So um, I recognize this behavior, and I recognize that it was something that I had been doing before as well. And so I got help. I had a coach, and I told my coach that what I want to work on is to stop being busy. And, Ivan used to laugh that my middle name is Busy. So every time somebody asks, like, how are you, Neeru? I'm like, oh, I'm busy. And people would even say to me, oh, you're so busy nowadays. And it's like a badge. And I realized I don't want to wear this busy badge anymore. I wanted to be available. I wanted to be available for conversations. I wanted to be available for trying out new things. I wanted to be available to experiment and to enjoy my life. And I was not available for any of that because I was so busy. So I very consciously, hired a coach, and, my goal for the coaching was to unbusy myself. And I started that first by taking a week off. And now it's been, I think, I think almost 2 years, more than 2 years actually. 2.5 years, I think. And no, 1.5 years. Every single month I take a week off, and I have no agenda in that week. And I kept telling myself, but if I do this, I'll lose business. But I actually grew my business because I now I had less time. So I had to say no to those clients that were not paying me enough, that were, causing me a lot of stress because I didn't have time now. And as I started saying no to that, I started having more time in my schedule to say yes to the kind of work that I really wanted to be doing. And the moment I started doing that, I saw a lot more abundance. I was able to, to double my business that year. And I've continued to do that. And I've continued to take a week off every month. So I only work 3 weeks in a month. And I've continued to grow my business, every single year after that as well. So, when I work with my clients, some of my clients actually come to me and they're like, I want to be there. I want to be at the point at which, I can take a week off and not worry about my business. So it's not easy. It's tough because you have to say no to the things that are coming to you easily. And you have to say yes to trying out new things. You have to say yes to failure. You have to say yes to experimenting. You have to say yes to becoming someone who you're not. You have to say yes to getting out of your comfort zone and growing into somebody that you really are, but you're not able to live that persona, that part of you yet. So that's what I did. And I believe that plays a huge role in how I'm responding to this change right now. I believe that being able to take that time out, not be fearful of losing business, because I know that business will come. Not being fearful of putting myself first. And I think those habits that that are now part of me have really helped me to get through this transition.
Perfect. Neeru, I believe this is the best ending we probably could have for this interview. Such an inspirational story for others. And guys, maybe go a few minutes back and listen to the story again, because there's so much into it. Neeru, thank you very much for your time and really appreciate it. I believe it will help many of our listeners.
Wow. Neeru is such an inspirational person. I really believe that you guys made notes from this episode. I did, and I will apply them in my business. As usual, we listed all the links in this episode's show notes on our website, as well as a link to Neeru's Facebook group. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends or other business leaders if you believe it can help them navigate in these hard times. On behalf of our producer Arshak Ismail, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you very soon.